Hello and welcome to this episode of the James Donald Forbes McCann Catamaran Plan Podcast, the show where I, James Donald Forbes McCann, am trying to raise enough money to buy a boat. And I'm on tour at the moment doing comedy. We're in Melbourne. We were in Brisbane yesterday. We're in Adelaide the day before that. And we'll be in Sydney tomorrow. And Melbourne is, for those uninitiated, I mean, how would we describe Melbourne? Melbourne likes to call itself Australia's New York. Oh, Sydney, that's LA, but Melbourne is New York. And really, the parallel only extends to this. Sydney is very beautiful and Melbourne is very cold. That's really about as close as you could get. Very different cities, very different parallels. Sam, Clarke and I are Adelaide boys, and Adelaide has a long rivalry with Melbourne, all the best and brightest. They move off to Melbourne, and I will say that we don't care for Melbourne. Now, obviously, we love many people in Melbourne. We love many things about Melbourne. And we love the 400-plus people who just came out to see the show in Melbourne. What a joy that was. But then you come back to this hotel room, and this is not a cheap... I didn't decide... Listen, if it was me deciding on the hotel rooms, I'd be in a YMCA, and I'd be saving money for the Catamaran plan. I don't have enough money to be living like this. But when you're doing a big tour and other people are doing it, I didn't pay much attention to it. They've booked us in hotel rooms. I can tell you I wouldn't have booked this one. No negativity. It's just that there's everything I hate about interior design in one room. And so for those of you with the visual element, this is very exciting. I get to show you. Do we want to do a little pivot? Can we show anything in the... one at a time. You'll notice that it's monochromous. It's a... use of color is very rare. And when you do see color, you really appreciate it. Usually on a gold fitting. Again, it's a nice hotel room. I'm not saying it's not nice. It's very comfortable. It's just everything that I want to destroy is in one place at the same time, and it seems too convenient not to walk through all my problems with interior design on the one room. Very minimal use of color. I don't know if you can see the rug, but the rug is sort of like a pseudo Persian block orange. No real complaints with that. There are small blue blankets on the bed, and there's a what we call that, isometric, geometric. There's some sort of metric pattern there. And then otherwise it's grey. Even the wood is grey or black. The curtains are black. The walls are grey. This is very cheap IKEA product felt. When you have people who've bought the cheapest IKEA products will know when they want to make something out of the fabric that costs the least amount of money, it's that wall. Which I'm not saying it's bad that wall's there. I'm sure a lot of loud intercourse happens by very open-minded Melburnians in the neighbouring rooms, and they want to dampen that with these felt walls. But it's just the grey. And I'd like to start by talking about monochrome. I know this is a podcast about me buying a boat, and we'll be talking more about boat ownership and the journey therein shortly. But why do modern interior designers insist on grey, black and grey? Why is colour in such profoundly short supply? Two theories. One is my theory and one is my friend Casey's theory. Even before we saw this hotel room, we were discussing earlier today what the problem is with all the grey. She said in recessions, people move away from colour. It's hard to... Well, when you have a colour, the other colours have to go with it. And that's something that rich people can do because you can buy more things, have more products on the market. But in an economic contraction, monochrome things, it's easier to buy them, what's the word, eclectically. And so that's why you go grey. And that's very sad. My original thing, I thought, she was like, poor countries, you go grey when you're poor. And it's like, I don't know, have you seen any footage from Africa? I think you'll find there's a lot of poor people in Africa, and they're wearing the most garish colours imaginable. But those colours don't match, potentially, within the Western colour palette. The grey, I don't care for, and I see it everywhere. This open plan, it's not a cupboard. Look at this. What is this? This like open... Again, it feels very like Scandi, minimalist, just black, and with LED strips everywhere. LED strips there, LED strips behind the bed. That's what has taken the place of beautiful classical architecture is LED strips. You go through Melbourne and all the big buildings, they have LED strips on them. And it doesn't look fancy. It just looks like they're being covered in neon rope for some reason. Like some sort of skyscraper bondage is taking place. I'm against it. We haven't gotten to the real complaints I have for this room, which is behind me. I don't know if you can see that frosted glass. My mother, when she was preparing our house for sale some years before our home was for sale, she was having people come through and see like what was the right way to get a house ready for sale. What do you want to do so that it will alienate the fewest number of people possible? And with that objective in mind, what the interior designer pitched her, interior designer is maybe a stretch, what the bathroom door salesman pitched her, and that she was taken by briefly, was frosted glass. And the bathroom is next to the kitchen. So the thought was you would have frosted glass on the bathroom door. And I remember my mum was sort of on the fence. She was like, that's sort of interesting. I was like, so that we can see people poop while we're eating? You don't want to see what goes on in the bathroom. You want that to be the most opaque. You don't want a low transparency setting. You don't want to be going, I can sort of see. You want nothing. And I thought, who would ever have frosted glass in front of where people defecate? Bam! There it is. That salesman had his merry way with a hotel chain. Can you see? Should I walk over there? All right, I'll take all the stuff with me. I mean, again, to drive it home, this is like a net. So you can see people brushing their teeth. God forbid you have a single moment of privacy in this world. Then you come through here to the toilet. Here I am in the pooper. Can you see me, Sam? You can see me really clear? What is the purpose of this? What is the argument in favour of being able to see people go? Now, here's my theory on that. This is not my theory for interior design overall, but this is my theory for the frosted glass, is that without God, we actually want to be monitored all the time. Christopher Hitchens used to go on, and there was a very convincing argument with the liberal progressivists at the time about God is always watching you. This is like a celestial. How do I do my Christopher Hitchens? Hold on. Just imagine I've had a couple of drinks and left my pregnant wife. All right. God is watching you. It's like a celestial North Korea. It's not my it was more of a Peter Hitchens, if anything. Sorry, Pete. I think that without God, we actually like being watched. We actually like that our phones are monitoring. That came out early in Obama's term, that there was a government agency that was just reading all the emails. I think, if anything, it made people more comfortable because we're built to want someone watching. And in the Christian conception, that's God. Only God can judge us. But without God, we have to have cameras everywhere. And sad to say, frosted glass on the pooper. Mental. Crazy stuff. They don't have slippers here as well. That's one of the few things I truly love about going to a hotel room. Usually I don't care for it. But to have slippers. And here they've not gone with that. There are special room socks. This is more just I was hoping this wouldn't descend into just attacking this specific hotel room. I wanted to talk about, do you know what I mean? Like I wanted to talk, so I'm not going to bother about the socks. I'm more high-minded than that. This is not about the socks. This is about spirit. It's about the heart. It's about interior design. Here's my theory as to why interior design has gone grey. We've had Casey's theory in the recession. This is a better way to have products that more people will buy because people don't have the money to colour match for specific products. Okay. I think it's because the baby boomers were an extremely colourful generation. They've gone, you're watching a movie or a documentary and it goes from black and white to colour during the guitar solo. Someone has LSD for the first time and colour is introduced. And that's what the baby boomers see themselves as having been, as the colourful people, as opposed to the people of colour. Very colourful in Africa, as we've already discussed on this podcast. We're an explosion of light and colour. We're wonderful. We make things interesting, so say the baby boomers, and so is the fashion of the late 60s. And I think that now, as the baby boomers die, They use their capital to enforce a norm of the world being grey. They want, once they're dead and gone, they want us to inherit a very grey world so that we will look back and say, oh, isn't everything grey? Wasn't it nice when the baby boomers were around, though, and they brought a little colour? Oh, we are truly lost without the baby boomers. They were the important generation. Now, that's more conspiratorial. That's maybe no one's actually thinking that. Maybe that's not even in the ethos. Maybe that's crazy. Maybe that's a poem. But it's what's happening. Black umbrella. You know what I'm saying? The wood. This fake wood laminate that they've got. This thing that looks like wood. I see it more and more. It's on the floor as well. Is that now? Do you think that's real wood? Might be real wooden, but it's grey. Wooden. If you have wooden floor, it may be. Is it a good? I think that's actually a good linoleum. Yeah, that's not a floorboard. That is not a floorboard. That is a linoleum. I can tell because of how grey it is and how cheap it is. And if you have wood, if you have a Jarrah floor, you can have a rich, earthy tone. I mean, my goodness, we figured out the colours that a house should be, and the way it's a real looking Persian rug. It's nice, earthy wooden floorboards. It's a feature wall. Don't you remember Room Swap? Is that what it was called? Changing Rooms. I mixed up Changing Rooms and Wife Swap. But you would come in and they would redesign someone's room for them. And it's like it doesn't matter how you get a home for sale anymore, in this country at least, because it's the land. It's all the land. It's 95% the land. You get a $700,000 house. The house is worth $10,000, something crazy. It's all land. And that's why The Block, a television show in Australia where they used to go and renovate a home. And there was a season that I watched the season finale, and it just like, I mean, for years, The Block would work and they'd make a lot more money, if for no other reason than 3 months had passed since they started working on the house. And the appreciation in land meant that if you then sold it after that, it was worth more money. Like everything was going above value. Everything goes above valuation in this country. It's nuts. Excuse me. And what was I talking about? Sam? Take me back. The floor. No, I think it was after the floor. It doesn't matter. Oh, The Block. I'm sorry, I've just done a show. Now we do another show. A show of another kind. Anyway, The Block is now they renovate a resort. And that makes sense at least, because people can still choose what resort to go to. So making it more desirable with interior fittings makes sense. But in terms of a house for sale, it doesn't do nothing anymore. It's worthless. That brings me to another question. I know this podcast is meant to be about me buying a boat. And on today's episode, me talking about modernity as it manifests, maybe this becomes popular enough that I can use the money to buy a boat and get onto the sea. But specifically, hold up, far out. I'm losing the trains. I'm losing the trains of thought. I was talking about The Block. I was talking about resorts. Sam, help me. I was so ready. I was on the precipice of a big complaint. Yes, houses being expensive. Why? I'll tell you why. This is again, I've been thinking. When we came to this country, not empty, but not a lot of cities. What we started doing was we built in Australia and America and whatever, started building new settlements, you know? If you look at Europe, you fly over Europe, you fly over America, it's just stuff, wall to wall, small towns going all over the place. And something happened where they stopped making new cities at some point. I don't know why, I don't know where, I don't know the mechanism by which that occurred. Maybe there were too many amenities required to make a new place. If you were to make a new township on the old frontiers, I've said this time and time again, it was you and some hombres knocking up a property. You and the boys would get out there. You didn't know nothing about building houses, but you could make a log cabin. You could get it done. And was it warm? Probably not. Did it keep the rain out? Maybe sometimes. But you could just go where the people weren't, or sadly, you'd kill the people who were on that land if they were the indigenous persons of that land, and you'd take it. But once you had the land, you just build a house. And now you need plumbing, now you need electricity, you need Wi-Fi, you need codes and standards and whatever. And so the result is it's been privatized, and we just have cities getting big. There's no new cities. We're not even taking towns and making them bigger in a meaningful way. In Australia, it's just 5 big cities where as you build out, the land gets less and less desirable because you're further and further away from all the things worth doing and seeing in the city. You got to let a company do it, and they build something that looks like this, and it's hideous, and no one wants to live there, and so people buy it, and it's investment property, and then they don't have to live there. They get to live in their nice house, while poor people who will never own a home go and rent in a terrible dwelling. Excuse me. So the answer, I think, is just new cities. Get the hombres together and go and build it over there. And there are places in the world where they're doing this. Detroit is sufficiently carved out that people can go there and effectively make it. This is what they say. I've never been to Detroit, but I hear it's getting better now. Steubenville is the big one, and it's very impressive. In a Rust Belt town, it was 60,000 people or something like that. It came down to 18,000 people. And they're going then, there are people, they've got a trade school, the College of St. Joseph the Worker / Liberal Arts Academy, where you learn to build a house, fit a window, that sort of business, and also you get to read Aristotle. That's no bad thing. I think it's doable. I've watched the YouTube videos on making a house. I've met people who build houses. No disrespect. I reckon there are more people in society who are also at that level. You meet a quantum physicist, right? And you go, wow. It's just you that's able to do this, isn't it? I don't meet a lot of people like you. But tradesmen, they're the people, literally unskilled laborers. It's a good job, and more people should be allowed to do it. I of course, am frail. I don't have what it takes to lift and to move. I just mean, I think people could build houses. People should build their own houses. Because $1 million is too much money to pay for a humble 3-bedroom suburban home in an unpleasant area. It is. It's sad what $1 million gets you in this country. It's, frankly, made watching game shows less exciting. You used to watch Survivor. Now in Australia, they don't win $1 million. They win $500,000. And they have to be on the island for longer, and the dollar is worth less than the American one. But you're on the island for 40 days, and at the end they go, you've won $500,000. And they're going, yes! 70% of a house! A smaller mortgage than we otherwise would have had to have had. When I was a kid, you watch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, they get to the final question, $1 million. And Eddie Maguire, the host, goes, what are you going to buy with $1 million in the 90s? And they go like, I might buy an island. I might buy a whole island off the coast of Brisbane. And Eddie's going, yeah, that's a sane thing to do with $1 million is a lot of money. Now, you win $1 million, guess you buy a pair of shoes. No, but seriously, folks, it's very nice. It is nice to be here in Melbourne. There are many beautiful things about Melbourne. Nice food, AFL football, people in Melbourne, and the suburb of Kew, which doesn't have a cool reputation, but I used to live in a place called Kew. And it's on a hill. There aren't many hills in Melbourne. But it's like built old. I have a lot of feelings when I come back to Melbourne. I had a lot of feelings everywhere we've been going. We had a lot of feelings in Brisbane, didn't I, Sam? And not just feelings of arousal when we went past strip club after strip club. My goodness, do they have enough strip clubs there? Can't build nice suburban homes that people want to move into. No problem knocking up a strip club. Motivated buyer. Have not gone to the strip clubs. Wouldn't do that. But I see them. Of course, in Melbourne, not so many strip clubs. Many masseuses. And I had the fun. A couple of us were out. We got to explain to Sam what made them obviously illegitimate massage parlors. I said something like, how many rub and tug joints do you need in one city? Lovely Sam was going, how do we know that's not a real... Bring it up, come on. Well, how do you know that's not a real... It's like, I don't know, the big neon sign, the utter lack of graphic design and effort that's gone into it. And then who with Sam, other Sam, and she was like, I think a good indicator is whether or not you can see into it at all, or if they've just put massive stickers across the window. And I had a little breakthrough. I was wondering why in America there are so many street prostitutes. In Australia there's none. And it's, of course, I think because in small towns and conservative cities across America, the what do they call them? The sex-having buildings have shut down and are not allowed or are secretive because it's crime. And in most of Australia, nowhere in Australia is it regularly enforced as a crime. Prostitution is a crime in South Australia, but I don't remember the last time there was a high-profile arrest of someone slinging puss. But, of course, we've got the buildings. So the prostitutes go inside. And in America, they've gone, well, we don't want the prostitution. Let's stop them from going. Let's not let them have a building. They'll have to go outside. And it turns out that that wasn't the factor in stopping someone selling sex for money. Was a roof. It was, I don't know what the factor is. I don't know what you could do. Thomas Aquinas, I think, says don't get rid of the red light district. Like there are more important things to do before then because it would just come out in other directions. And the Japanese are in favor of a red light district. They classify it as a sewer. You have the toilet for the ones and twos. You have the red light district for the number threes. Sam making all sorts of faces. I apologize. It's been one of those days. I'm glad we're getting out of this room tomorrow. This is making me genuinely upset. I should talk about the Catamaran plan. Wow. But there's no real update since the last episode, which will have come out a week ago, and for me will have come out today. Well, I mean, what did we do today? Should we talk through it? We got up. Banana. I woke up this morning. Banana. What happened next? We went for a walk. We went to a record store. Sam perused the disco records. Didn't see anything that caught his eye. But I noticed they had a lot of Japanese records, and that was very nice. And if we weren't traveling, I would have, even though I don't have a record player, I would have been very tempted to buy the Japanese version of Macho Man, the alternate cover of Macho Man. Then, we had a great drive. We had a great Uber to the airport with a man who had been a lawyer, and we talked about the legal profession for 30 minutes and his family. And he was obviously of subcontinental extraction, and he asked me where I was from, which opened that up for me. I don't open with hey mate, where are you from? That's rude to just pursue. You're brown. Why? Tell me about why you're brown. But he asked me. He said, "Where are you from?" And I told him. I said, "How long you been in Brisbane?" And he said, "Whatever, a couple of years." I said, "Where were you before that?" He goes, "Guess where I'm from." Guess. I said, I think he said 3 guesses. And I said, I resisted the urge to say Ceylon. I said, Sri Lanka. And he said, no. I said, silly. I said, Southern India. That was a mistake. I should have just said India. He said, no. It turned out not to matter because my next guess was Pakistan. Zigged instead of Bangladesh. But I could tell if he was from India, he was... Anyway. I know racists. I see racists. I spend a lot of time. Man, I can pick Yoruba sometimes. I've spent so much time on Wikipedia, seen so many people. I can pick tribes in Africa sometimes. Excuse me. Dinka. Maasai. How many African tribes can I name? Let's not try. Author. Don't know how to say that. It's got a click in it. I'd work from south to north. I'd get absolutely stuck in the Congo. Excuse me. This is not... I was meant to be talking about the boat. Anyways, that was a really nice ride. Then we got to the airport, and it was muddled and confused at Brisbane Airport. They're growing at an alarming rate. They'll be just as big and unpleasant as Melbourne in no time. And then we touched down in Melbourne. Touched down. Sam had to sit next to a big lady. We were sitting together. and he had the middle seat, and I got to really spread out somewhat on the flight. And then, honestly, Sam, I don't remember what happened next. The next thing I remember is we were at the gig. Went to go see my friend Sam. We had a conversation about massage parlors. We did the show. Came back after the show. And now we're here in this beautiful, beautiful hotel room. I love Melbourne. I love the people of Melbourne. It was a great show. I hate Melbourne. Melbourne's a terrible city. There's something rotten at its core. There's something rotten at its core. There's something wrong with Melbourne. There is something wrong with Melbourne, and it makes people here unhappy. I mean, this is the city where they had the longest, I think outside of China, it was the longest lockdown in the world. And if you had the longest lockdown in the world, if the biggest anything during COVID, something's wrong. That's an indication that something's gone very wrong with the government. Although I do like that the government used the massive amounts of power they concentrated in themselves after COVID to push through a subway system. You've got to have a lot of political control to have a subway system, and I'm glad that dictator Dan Andrews decided that it would be spent on a subway system. I'm sure I won't love the subway that they end up building. It's probably going to be a whole lot of LED lighting. I don't imagine they'll be doing a Soviet-style chandelier-type job. But much respect for trains. Melbourne's getting better. You know what? Here it is. Melbourne is like the most purely, really capitalist city in Australia. And that might sound nuts because it's left of centre and increasingly so. But of course, the face of capitalism has become... We all know we're culturally capitalism. Melbourne, what I mean, it loves growth. Melbourne alone, Brisbane's trying, but Brisbane has geographic questions like hills and Queenslanders that make it more difficult to be that addicted to growth. But Melburnians are just like, we're going to be number one. We're going to be bigger than Sydney. We're going to grow and grow and grow. And they can because it's flat. Sydney is sort of hemmed in by the sea and mountains. Its geography makes it difficult to get much bigger unless they were to knock down old Sydney, and they won't do it. That's why Sydney house prices are absolutely the worst. Everything in eastern Sydney, central and western, make sense of that. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful, Sydney. The harbour. Oh, we get to be in Sydney tomorrow? Wow. Sydney's so beautiful. And they've gone, it's almost like a bonsai. They've gone, these are the limitations. We're not changing it. Go make the West as ugly as you feel. But this part of Sydney, old Sydney, by the harbour, this beautiful font. It's not a font, it's a harbour. Excuse me. This wellspring. It's not a wellspring. It's not a font. What is it next? A waterfall? Is it a lake? It's a harbour. It's so beautiful. The beaches are so beautiful. The architecture is so beautiful. And they won't change it for nobody. And as a result, the rest of Sydney has to become very bad. But Melbourne has said, oh, it's just flat. It's just flat forever. You'd have to, I don't know, you have to get to Bright before it gets hilly. Oh, there's the Dandenongs. We'll go around the Dandenongs. My point is it's very flat. And so it can just grow forever. And they just grow suburb. There was a copywriting job that I left. And the instigating thing for leaving the copywriting job was that they had me writing about these new suburbs that they were building in Melbourne, and I had to, write nice things about. It's a svelte 1 hour and 10 minute commute to the CBD. Yuck! And what they do, they have the centre. They just sprawl out further and further away, and then they put a Westfield shopping centre, the mall. They put one of those every 20 minutes, dotted around in a belt, so that everyone has something that they can go to on the weekend, and that medical centres to make up for hospitals and that sort of thing, and some of the crappiest public schools you can imagine. And yeah, we let the evangelicals take a couple along the way, just so that they're not too upset moving out there. And that's it. It's just like houses, ugly houses that look like this on the inside, copy-paste houses that look the same over and over again. I'm sorry that this is a ramble. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought I'd be walking around the room with a microphone and doing zingers. Hey, look at this television. And then I'd say a zinger, but I don't have it. I just hate that growth. And it's different in Australia. In America, rich people live on the outside because black people move to the middle of the city, and the rich whites, they fear the urban black poor people and the black poor Hispanics the black poor Hispanics and the poor urban Hispanics and of course the urban poor whites too. But there's a reason that urban, that's urban, very urban. People just say urban. People say urban to mean black in America. They'll go, there were some urban comedians here last night. It's like, what, you get away with saying something racist because you called them urban instead of black? That doesn't seem... that seems fucking dumb. Excuse me. I must remember to edit out that swear word at 30-something seconds, minutes, whatever. It's just not a good episode. I apologize. Anyway, rich people live in the suburbs and poor people live in the city because of white flight, that people went, we'll just drive in. We're not going to. And so the downtowns are all decayed. But in Australia, it's just so rich in the middle. And then it just gets poorer and worse the further out you go. And this is not an answer. An answer is getting together with the hombres and building your own real meaningful thing out there. And why don't you do that, James? It's illegal. I think if me and my hombres went and made wood cabins in the Adelaide Hills, they'd shut us down. In my first term of office, if you go get yourself a piece of land out there, no building regulations. You build it, you're willing to suffer the consequences, you do what you want to do. It's my gift to you as Prime Minister. At very least, we've got to have inducements to go and fill up Broken Hill. We've got all these big roads and things going on a Broken Hill. No one wants to live there because it's really hot and it's full of red sand. They also got rid of the hill. There's a mining town called Broken Hill, and they mined it so much that there's no hill anymore. The hill's gone. Progress towards the boat, much the same as it was in the previous episode. Don't forget to join the Patreon. There's a Patreon. Hey, it's been great being here on the James Donald Forbes McCann Catamaran plan with you. Thank you to Sam Clarke. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Jimmy.
And we'll come to you with another episode in the future, I'm sure. Next week. But I'll be filming it tomorrow from Sydney. Second only to Adelaide, Steubenville, New York City, Paris. I've never been to Paris, but I'm watching a lot of it in the Olympics. Oh yeah, we won't watch one of the pornos we were going to watch, Sam. We'll watch the Olympics. We'll watch a little Olympics. Thank you. Catamaran ho. Goodbye.